Very much, Kate. And hello to you, wherever you are in the world. I know we have students from many different countries, so thanks for tuning in if it's at a late or an early time for you. But you can look at the range of webinars that we've done. We've done several now. You can look at the range of them on our YouTube channel. So if you missed one or you need to look at one again, look them up on YouTube under SLC, Specialist Language Courses, and you'll be able to see the full range. So today I thought we'd do reading. We've done a couple on writing, and we've done a listening one. So this is the first one on reading. So reading, I think, is a fairly easy one for most of you. Most of you get good scores, but we can increase the amount of score you get, which will bring your average IELTS score up very easily by taking a few hints from this, because there are common problems. People approach the reading test perhaps in a different way to the way I would read it, but that's because I know how it was written. So I'm going to try to give you as much knowledge as I know about how the writing in the reading is written, because once you know that, that's a key. Once you know that, you're in and you can find your way around the text far more easily, which will cut down on the length of time you spend, and I must admit, uselessly reading. It's quite possible to answer all 40 questions by reading no more than 40 or 50%. So it's called the reading test, but I like to think of it as the read as little as possible test. So let's have a look and we'll analyze exactly what I mean by that. So today's webinar, we're going to look at an outline of the reading section. I'm going to tell you what the marker is looking for. Notice I've said what is the marker looking for, not the examiner, because this is not a trained person. This is a person who's looking for set answers with very little deviation. So it can be done by clerical or admin staff without any specialist knowledge of the English language. So I'm going to look at how you can score as high as possible, and then, as Kate said, we'll have a question and answer session later. So let's have a look at an overview of the IELTS test, the reading module. So we have 3 texts, and there are 40 questions about information which is contained in the text. You've got 60 minutes to do it. Unlike the listening test, in the reading test, you don't get any extra time. Those of you who have done an IELTS test already will know that, but if you're fresh to it and you haven't done one, remember that while you're doing the test, you should be transferring your answers directly to the answer sheet, which will be marked. With the listening, it's slightly different. You listen and jot things down, and then you transfer the answers. And you're given 10 minutes to do that. So the reading test, first thing to remember, you don't get an extra 10 minutes. So there are 3 texts. Each text might be up to 2,000 words long. It depends how complicated the text is. Some of them are of a simpler nature. Some of them are from magazines and newspapers rather than from full-on academic texts. So a simpler text with a simpler set of vocabulary might be up to 2,000, perhaps even a little longer, 2,000 or so words long. More complex texts, which have come from perhaps academic journals or textbooks on a subject, and the subject range can be very broad. It could be literally anything at all. The thing is, you don't need a specialist knowledge to be able to answer it. The questions are written in a way that you need to understand what the text has said, but they're not about technical things that you need outside information to know about. All the answer is contained in the text. all you have to do is understand what the words mean. Most of you are looking for 7 or 7.5. The nursing staff will need 7. Those of you who are doctors and wanting to work in the UK, you need 7.5. So what do we need to get to 7? Well, you're going to need to know quite a number of words. Most of you are operating on several thousand words, perhaps not as many as a native speaker would be using, but you're almost there. You're almost at native level. You've got a good command of English. I know that because I've seen your exam results, those of you who've taken exams, and when I talk to you, there's a good standard of English. Vocabulary is at a high level. You perhaps don't know every word which is in the reading, but that's not always necessary. So the text might be 2,000 words long. If it's a simple text, it might be fewer words if it's a more technical text. And like all the other modules, it's marked on a 9-band system. Theoretically, I would be 9 on a good day. I would hope to score 8.5 every day, but some of them are quite tricky. It's not an easy test. You're using it for a work situation, but this test at the level you need to pass would give you direct entry into a master's level course at a UK university. So it's not easy, but I'm going to show you how to make it a little bit easier for yourself, because this happens, as you know, among 4 other sections of the IELTS test. It's a stressful day. So let's try and make your day a little less stressful when you come to do it. So what is the marker looking for? Well, I've said marker again because there's no judgment really. It's either right or wrong. But to be right, there are perhaps 3 or 4 different acceptable words or phrases. But these are the important things. It needs to be spelled correctly. If it's spelled incorrectly, it's not the word they were looking for. There's been some talk about, and this is something I don't know even as an examiner. I examine on speaking and on writing, but I don't mark either the listening or the reading. So I don't know how much leeway they've got. If your writing is a bit up and down, and you write something like intelligent, but you're not quite sure how to spell it, and you write intelligent, the bit will probably be accepted. But I would draw your attention to the last one on this list, legible writing. So we need correct spelling. If you can print it, that would be perfect. If you're not sure of a spelling, I think you get away with something approaching it. If it's really wrong, it won't be accepted. If it looks correct, it's probably okay, but I don't know because I'm not a marker of either the reading or the listening. So nobody really knows except a few people in Cambridge where the tests are marked. So the marker then goes through your printed answer sheet and marks yes or no, and then those papers are fed through a computer which will count how many out of the 40 questions you've got correct. So you need correct spelling, and included in the spelling, I would say capitalization is included there. So correct capitalization for proper nouns, things like places, people's names, that sort of thing. And the writing should be legible. If the marker can't read it or it's causing them strain, they're going to have no sympathy and just mark it wrong. If they cannot tell what the word is, it's wrong. So write legibly. Print, if your writing's a bit scrawly, like mine can be sometimes, print and everybody will be able to read it. Okay. So what types of questions do we have in the reading? Well, there are many types of questions. There's quite a range in reading. It's a surprising amount. They might include gap filling with a word from a list, so that they might give you perhaps 10 or 12 possible words, and they have gaps for 5. They always give you more words than you need, and quite often they're sneaky. They have words which have very similar meaning. Maybe the difference between promote and advertise, that's quite similar, but one of them will always be a better fit. So it's getting you to think about vocabulary, but they always give you more, so that you're thinking even to the last question. If you had the correct number of possibilities for the gaps, then it would be very easy when you get to number 5. Well, it must be the last one because there were only 5 words. But if they give you 8 or 9, you're always thinking right down to the last one. So sometimes you get a list of words, then you must fill the gap with those words. Those words might be synonyms, or they might have come from the text. Again, different grades of easiness, if you like. If that word is in the text, if it says advertise in the text, and advertise is one of the words, well, you've got it. But if it said something like warm, and it said not very hot, you would have to recognize that that was a synonym. So gap filling with a synonym, you might have to supply that synonym, or they might ask the question using a synonym. So it's again looking at the words you know, the amount of vocabulary you have. We've talked in previous webinars about how to maximize the amount of vocabulary you get. I'm going to run another webinar soon about increasing vocabulary. If that's one of your problems, tune in on that one. It might be selecting a paragraph heading or a section heading. Maybe it's broken up into, the text is broken up into 10 paragraphs, and you're asked to provide titles for each section or each paragraph. So you need to know what's in the paragraph. We'll come to that later, how can you tell? But we need to know what's in that paragraph, and then you can select a suitable sort of summary for it, which then becomes your heading. They might ask you pretty simple ones, which are easy questions. If you know what to look for, we would use the scanning technique to find these, looking for names, places, dates, and times. Later on today, I'll show you how you can home in on those without having to read everything to find out. And possibly the type of question which causes people the most anxiety, and they get wrong most often, are these, I'm going to call them the dreaded true, false, not given. They seem to cause big problems. Later, I'll show you how you can minimize the time you spend reading all around the text, looking for something which is not there. There's a lot of time spent, and wasted time, a lot of time spent looking for answers which are there, but you haven't realized you've seen them. So I'll touch on that later. Now, what do we have to do? Well, the first thing to realize is that you cannot read 6,000 words carefully, plus the questions, and the questions might add up to another 200-300 words, depending how they're worded, and then answer them and write them onto your answer sheet carefully in 1 hour. It's just too much. And imagine this, that there are 3 texts. So obviously one of them is worth 33%, 2 of them would be worth 67%, and 3 of them would be worth 100%. So you need to tackle 100% of them. You need to tackle all 3 in order to have a chance of scoring more than, well, let's think. If you do 2, perfectly, every question correct, your maximum IELTS band score will be 6. Why is that? Because 2 of them is only 67%. 67% gives you band 6, possibly scrape a 6.5, depends how it's weighted that week. So you get a 6 or a 6.5. You need then to tackle the third one as well. And you cannot do 3 of them by reading every word. I can't do it, and I'm a quick reader. I read English very quickly, and I've got good skimming and scanning techniques. I can't do it. I need to decide what I'm going to read. And that's fairly easy to do. Once you realize that it's written and the texts are produced in the way that will help you, in the way that you should be doing your writing, you realize, well, this is easier than I thought. And the key is 1 idea, 1 paragraph. And even if the writing IELTS, when they're setting the exams, when they're looking at questions in Cambridge, they will find what looks like a suitable text, but maybe it's not quite so well written. There might be some problem with it, or a bit of ambiguity, maybe a bit of, it could be both. Well, IELTS will rewrite it. IELTS write it so that it follows good writing practices. 1 idea, 1 paragraph. So once we've realized that, it then becomes a bit easier. So what do we have to do? Let's say, for instance, we're faced with a text of 2,000 words, possibly a bit less, maybe a bit more, about the history of the Ford Motor Company. So we can see there, Ford Motor Company, and the old sign started in Detroit, Michigan, with this sort of logo, and now the logo we know today. So it's a company with a long history. And this is 1 text, so we'd have 10 to 13 questions. Each section would sometimes 14, it depends how many. So each section, each text would have 10 or 13 questions in it. 2,000 words, what would we do? Would we read it all first? No. If you read it all first, you have no idea what you're looking for, and you've wasted 20 minutes or 50, even if you read quickly and it's 15 minutes. It's pointless. Do not read the text first. Look at the questions first. So the question, let's take 1 question. I've pulled 1 question out of the 10 or 13 just to demonstrate this. So let's say the question asks you this: what will the company do in future to maximize profits? So we'll need to supply an answer. It might be 1, 2, 3, occasionally 4 words, usually 3, and they'll make using no more than, and they'll tell you 3 words from the text. So now we know that the words come from the text. We're not looking at a list of words. We're not looking at supplied words. These must be words we find in the text. So what will the company do in future to maximize profits? I would know where to look. Where will you look in the text? Well, we need to look at the paragraph topic sentences. The first thing you should read should be the introduction. So read the introduction in the text. That will give you an overview. You'll get an idea of what it's about. And then you're armed with the question. You know the question. And the question asked you, what will the company do in the future? So start reading topic sentences. So the company was founded by, no, that's about the beginning of the company. Move on. During the First World War, no, that's 100 years ago. The interwar years, no, that's between World War I, World War II. The post-war years, no, that's the 40s and the late 40s and 50s. Nowadays, we've come up to date. What will the company do in the future? Could be there. Could be that one. I'll just see what the next paragraph is about. So I'll read the topic sentence. Notice I'm not even reading the full sentence. I'm just getting the flavor of what's in this paragraph. Because remember, one topic, one paragraph. It's written well. It doesn't deviate from that. So next paragraph, looking towards the future. Let's just remind ourselves, go back, remind ourselves, what will the company do in future to maximize profits? Well, it's likely that our answer is going to be in this text, isn't it? In this paragraph. So looking towards the future, the company have developed a range of electric cars or hybrid engines and hope to increase sales. So maximize profits will come about by increased sales. So using a bit of logic and some grammar, you found out where to look for this answer. That was quite an easy one because I've written these paragraph headings in chronological order, in time order, if you like. So it started at the founding of the company and moved forwards in time. This is just to demonstrate to you how we can do it. Occasionally, they'll start at the future, or they'll start now and work their way back. Or they might dot around. They might deal with the war years first, the First World War and the Second World War. Then they might deal with the interwar years and perhaps set over a different economic situations, that they can approach a history in different ways. So this is a simplified one in time order, in chronological order, but it might be chopped and changed. But the key was, what's this paragraph about? If the paragraph is not about the question, don't read it. I can't stress that enough. A lot of wasted time is spent reading perhaps what might be something very interesting. If the article's interesting, look it up on the internet afterwards. You don't have time during the day of the IELTS test. It might well be very interesting, but you don't have time. Why do they give us so little time? Well, it's to see that you know how to read effectively. Remember, this exam is used not just for people for work and for immigration purposes. The main reason the IELTS exam was created was to test people's level of English for university. So this was one of the criteria that they wanted, people to be able to read effectively, find the information they need quickly from a given text. You may be lucky and get a topic, perhaps it comes through as a nursing or some sort of medical topic, which you know very well. Maybe it was a project you studied at college or university, and you think, I know about this. Beware. Beware of things like that. You can't bring information from outside. If it's not in the text, you cannot answer it. Even if you know very well what it is, you cannot bring in outside information. It must be obtainable from the text. Okay? So, I hope that's given a hint of what we need. I will do that in summary. Read the questions first, then the introductory paragraph. What is the whole text about? Get a flavor for the whole thing. Then read the paragraph beginnings, the topic sentences. It's usually the first sentence. Occasionally it's the second sentence. Once or twice it may be in the last sentence of a paragraph as a sort of summary. So they might start talking about a topic immediately and then categorize it at the end. Perhaps in this way, we can see that the future is bright for the company, maybe. So that would be a difficult question. That would be one that was tricky. But it's usually the first sentence, called the topic sentence, and that's the key to what's in that paragraph. So read the introductory paragraph, read the topic sentences, then you'll know what each section of the writing is about. What I've done with my students in the past, I've taken a question I haven't done before, a new question, and I've got the text and said, okay, I'm going to do this. I hand out the text to all my students. They can see the text, and we read through the questions first. It's a good idea to predict what sort of answer is needed. So if it says who, this is going to be a person. If it says where, you're looking for a place, and so on. When, you're looking for dates and times. So predict what sort of answer it is. You can even predict in gap fills, is this going to be a noun or an adjective? Is it going to be a verb? Is it going to be a combination? It might be an adjective and a noun. And you get hints from that. There might be a or the. Well, you know that what comes after that will be a noun or a noun phrase. So hot or very hot, for example. So you can predict ahead what sort of thing you're looking for. And we also, digressing a little bit, this could be useful for you. We also have what's called sight vocabulary. When we look at some words, many of them are known to us so well that we don't have to decode them. We look at simple words like the, because, never. Words which are high in frequency. We see these words not once a week, not once a day, but once an hour. We see these words very often. Those are automatically recognized by your brain, and you don't have to go capitalize. Oh, must mean that what we do with a capital. Once you get a word and it's into your sight vocabulary, it's an automatically recognized word, and you don't have to work at it. So a great many words in this writing will be in your sight vocabulary. More than you think, actually. I could give you a newspaper article, and you would probably know at this sort of level, touching band 7 at reading, or more, band 7, 7.5, some of you have had already, and it's the writing which is a problem, but you're round about 7 at reading. That means you've got a huge amount of words in sight vocabulary, and if you were reading a newspaper, you will know 95% plus of the words. Unfortunately, the words you don't know might be the key to the understanding of the writing. And very often in IELTS, they're the answer words. But again, we can make this problem a positive by using it to our advantage like this. If we're reading for a place, a name, or a date, a time, those are probably not in our sight vocabulary. So it might be the name of a person, a city, a year. So things like Dr. John Pemberton is probably not in your sight vocabulary. Let's say the question asks you, who invented Coca-Cola? So you would know by the topic headings of the paragraphs about the invention or the beginning of the Coca-Cola company, so you'd know where to look. So who invented Coca-Cola? You would look in that paragraph, and Dr. John Pemberton will jump off the page, almost as if it's in bold type, because your brain has never seen that combination of letters. So a useful technique, because very often the things your brain doesn't recognize when you're reading quickly are the answers, the times, places, and names. Okay, so round up hints then for the reading section. Never leave a blank space in your answer paper. Why not? Well, unlike some exams, particularly American exams tend to, the TOEFL and the TOEIC exams, if you get a question wrong, your mark goes down. So that's called negatively marking. If you get a correct one, your score goes up. You put a wrong answer, your score comes down. So if you're not sure, it's best not to put anything. If you don't mark anything, you're not penalized. However, IELTS is a much kinder exam. If you get an answer wrong, no problem. You just don't get the mark. They don't take anything off you. So IELTS is marked in what they call the positive way, a positive marking exam. So have a guess. Could be the difference between 6.5 and 7. A couple of guesses which are right. And let's face it, if the answers are possibly A, B, C, D for 4 questions and you mark D for all of them, the chances are one of them's right. Mathematically, one of them will be right. So if it's 1 mark that you'll miss 7 from because you left a blank space, so never leave a blank space. So if it's A, B, C, D is multiple choice, just pick a letter. If it's a word that needs to be written, obviously don't write a random word. Put something connected with that area. Just guess. It's worth it. It might be the difference. Remember to capitalize proper nouns. For example, London, Manila, John Smith, Revolution Boulevard. So names, places, street addresses, country names, the nationalities of the people from those countries, and the languages, all of those proper nouns, and have capital letters. Now, possibly the most helpful hint I can give you when looking at your mark paper, there are 40 spaces on there, and you're transferring across as you do it. Check from time to time, double check that answer 17 goes into box 17. If you've missed one because you weren't sure, make sure that you're continuing on the next number, because if you get them in the wrong box, they're wrong. The marker is a very harsh person. They will not think, this candidate's skipped a line, and everything from number 17 onwards will be 1 mark apart. They don't care. They're not paid to work out your mistake. If the answer in 17 is wrong, 17 is wrong. Even if that is obvious, it's the answer to 18, and 18 is in 19, and 19 is in 20, and so on. It doesn't matter. They will not care. So check very carefully that you've got the correct answer in the correct box. Okay. Now let's get the next one. There we go. So the key to all this is to get SLC to help you. We can help you in many ways. I know some of you are on video programs with one-to-one teaching. Some of you are on email. Some of you are working through the book in other ways. There are lots of ways we can help you. And you can use the Facebook groups for those who are in the Philippines. You can use our YouTube channel to look at past webinars. And if you drop us a line with a sensible question, if it's something that we think everybody needs to know, we can put it up on the Facebook groups. We're going to start increasing the amount of information we put into Facebook, which will be of more help and benefit to you. So now I'd like to throw the floor open to you, because I know that this will have a lot of questions. I'm constantly asked about the true, false, not given, so I'm sure I'll have to re-explain that to you. So let's see now what questions you have for me. So as Kate said, you can use the question and answer box, or you could use the chat. I'll be looking at both of those. So I've stopped sharing the PowerPoint now, and I'll be able to monitor the Q&A. Okay, Hervik, hello Hervik, you've asked, are we not allowed to write in all caps? It's a risk. That's a great question. If you wrote in all capitals, you cannot be penalized for not writing in, for not putting a capital letter on somebody's name. However, there's no ruling. We've approached the IELTS bosses, we've approached them in Cambridge, and they say, well, do we write in capitals? Which sounds to me as if they disapprove of it, but we haven't had 100% no, you can't do it. I would suggest you don't, so then they won't have the chance to fail you, but we don't know. It's something which IELTS and Cambridge have kept close to their chest. They're not going to tell us. Station is asking, please give tips how to identify true, false, and not given. Okay, I thought we would have questions about this. First of all, you need to know when to stop looking. Identify the paragraph that you need, go to that paragraph and look for yes, you'll see positive evidence. We did it, or it happened. Positive, yes, would be the answer. Negative, when you see definite, we did not do it, or it does not happen, or it cannot happen. That's no. If it never answers it, if it hints at it, but doesn't actually say yes or no, it might talk with all the vocabulary about it, it might talk all around it, but if it doesn't say something positive or something negative, it's not given. It's fairly easy to do. What I think people get bogged down with, they start reading everything. They start reading the whole article to find out if it is given somewhere. So just knowing when to stop. Remember, one topic, one paragraph. So if the topic is about the history of the company, don't start reading the up-to-date stuff or the future. Your answer cannot be in there. Okay. What are the key markers that will help us identify whether the answer is a false or not given? Well, you've got to look for definite negative words. Negative words tend to have N in them, like none, nil, not, never. Most of them have an N. So if you see a negative word about the question, it's a no. If you just see talk about it and they never, you used a negative, they never say anything negative, then it's not given. If you see something positive, we will, we do, we are, that sort of positive thing, then you've got to say yes. So I agree with you, it can be confusing. And these questions tend to be given in the third passage, which is marginally harder. So if you're timing your 1 hour, you might want to think about giving 19 minutes, and 22 minutes for the last one, because it does take a little bit more thought. And you're right, Jericho, they can be confusing. It's to sort out the bands 8s and 9s. Thanks for your question. Agnes has a question for me. Please give tips how to get the title of the paragraph. Okay, as I said earlier, one paragraph, one topic. So read the topic sentence and imagine, oh, what could be the heading for this? So maybe it says, nowadays, building has taken place in both the north and the south of the city. So obviously that paragraph will be about building works in the north and the south of the city. All of that topic will be there. So your heading that you're looking for is something about building and something about the north and the south. So the heading might be something like building has now taken place in all areas, or all areas are now built on, something like that. It's not difficult if you recognize which sections deal with which topic. Then see which headings, which titles are synonymous with the topic of that paragraph. I hope that's answered. How about in pinpointing the best title for the paragraph? Oh, that's the same. I think I've answered that one. Okay. Oh, an anonymous viewer. Very mysterious. So, are we allowed to write in capitals for the multiple choice answers? I think I answered that earlier. I said I wouldn't. Some people do it, but I don't know whether you get the mark. IELTS are not telling us. Even myself as an examiner, I don't know. It's for the markers back in Cambridge, so I don't know. As a stopgap, as a safeguard, I would not write in capitals. Okay. What are the acceptable formats in writing date and time? So long as the marker can clearly see the date and the time and it uses English or English abbreviations, then you're fine. What I would say is there's a difference between 1 and the 1st. 1 March, or today, 1 April, is not really acceptable because it's the 1st of April. So April 1, not sure about that. You'd be safer to say April 1 ST. So try not to do it a cardinal number. Do it an ordinal number, which has got ST, ND, RD, TH. Okay. Roland, hello. Long time since I've heard from you, Roland. Are the questions in chronological order in the text? Right. No, they're roughly in chronological order, or in order of, not chronological, in the way that you read it, roughly. In the listening test, they most certainly are. Question 1 comes first, then question 2, then question 3. So if you hear the answer to question 3 before you've heard 2, you missed 2. But with the reading, it's slightly different. Possibly they'll have some in order questions, in order of the text. I'm not going to say chronological because it's not always about history. By the way, chronological's got an H, CHRON. You might get questions in order of your reading. Then towards the end, you might get global questions about what does the writer think about this. So you needed to have got a flavor, an overview of the whole thing, which you can get by reading the topic sentences. So not always is my answer. Mostly they're in the order of you reading them, but then you might get some global overall questions at the end. Maybe who is the writer's audience? And you might get a multiple choice. Is it for general public, a specialized audience, children, that sort of thing? Okay. Perfect's got another one for me. Does the answer always have to be the exact word written in the text? No, that they will tell you, they'll guide you. I thought it made that clear. Sometimes you have to get it from the text. Other times you have to have you're looking for, they give you a synonym to choose from. So it will guide you. Choose a word from the list or choose a word from the text. If it's asked you to choose one from the text and you make your own word up, which is similar, well, that's wrong because it didn't come from the text. So if they ask you to take it from the text, it must come from the reading. If they ask you to choose a synonym from a list, which means the same as a word in the text, then there's your use of synonyms. But you don't supply synonyms. You might have to understand a synonym in the question in order to know which part of the text you're reading, but don't supply one yourself. Okay. Can you give us an idea? This is Corion Gate. Can you give us an idea or possible sources of the text used in actual exams? No. It could be from newspapers, magazines, journals, textbooks, literally anywhere. One thing I did forget to mention, they might be highly specialized journals which are not in your field of work or experience at all. So occasionally they will write at the bottom a little glossary, a mini dictionary. So if there's a word you need and it's essential to understand, if it's essential to know that word, then they will explain what it means, a little mini dictionary. You quite often see them in the listening too. There'll be 2 or 3 words with an explanation, with a definition after them. So where do they come from? Lots of places. But don't worry, if you're capable of passing at level 7, you probably know enough words to be able to answer it. If there are words you don't know and you think, what does that mean? It's always worth having a look at the bottom. There might be a little glossary, a mini dictionary for you. Okay, Agnes again. What if I do not see the keywords that I'm looking for in the text? I think the keywords from the question, well, there you'll be looking for synonyms. So if it said government, and you don't see government in the paragraph you're reading, then you might have to think, well, what else could mean government? And it could be something like the authorities, or the higher powers, something like that, or the governance, perhaps. You might not say the exact words, but there'll be something similar. So if you don't see the word you're looking for, check for synonyms or something which sounds plausible. Okay. PC1. Okay. PC1, for gap-filling types of questions, will it matter if we follow British literature for S or Z? Different. Lots of people think this is a British-American problem. It isn't. It's just an alternative, and it depends which dictionary you have. Oxford, say S, Cambridge, say Z. There's great rivalry between the 2 universities, Oxford and Cambridge, and they have their own textbooks and dictionaries, and they fight quite often. So it doesn't matter. It's not a UK or British English, American English difference. America tends to favour Z, but you'll find S or Z in British too. The important thing to do is consistency. So the marker will know that some people spell with a Z, some people spell with an S. So if all your words, if you've got a few here, if you've got realize, customize, analyze, that sort of thing, if you spell them all with an S, that's fine. If you spell them all with a Z, that's fine. If you do a couple with S and one with Z, there's a problem somewhere. You're not sure of how to spell them. So just be consistent. But it doesn't matter. Both are recognized. Okay. Now, Jamie has a question. In filling of the gap, in gap filling, yeah, sometimes the word in the passage is not exactly in the passage. We're required to write 2 words, but in the passage it's more than 2. How would we answer this? You might have to change it. You might have to change the grammatical structure of it. You might have to change a noun to a verb. You might have to make it a past tense verb in order to do that. So long as the main word, the main root of the word is there, you've got it. Not exactly in the past. Yeah, you might have to jiggle it grammatically to do that. It's unusual you'd be asked to write 2. It's normally 3. Very, very occasionally you get 2 to do. But yeah, you'll just have to think, how can I say this based on the main word? But it might say quite a few cars. So you might have to change that to many cars, because cars was the important thing. But it doesn't often happen. They usually, you can lift the whole thing. Okay. So thanks for that question, Jamie. Hervik, is there a certain order in answering the reading section of the text, like in writing section, you finish task 2 first? No. I can't notice it, it doesn't seem different to me. It's quite difficult to say how difficult. It's difficult to say how difficult the reading texts are. Depends on how much vocabulary you've got, how easy you find it, and it's not an easy thing to categorize. So which one is more difficult? They say the last one is. Personally, I can't see it very often. I can't see that it is more difficult. Maybe the questions are sometimes more difficult, require you to read a bit more, but the texts themselves are fairly similar. So I wouldn't suggest that you do the beginning first or the end first. It's logical just to do them 1, 2, 3, because there's no advantage to doing one faster than the other. The only thing I would say, I just mentioned it a moment ago, because task 3 is seen as more difficult, and perhaps sometimes the questions are a bit more involved, maybe you have to read a little more, give yourself a minute extra from the others. So 19 minutes, 19 minutes, 22 minutes, because task 3, reading 3 might be a bit different. Okay, Carlin has got a question. Let me read this. Hello, Ian. I'd like to ask about the question that I've encountered, and it asked about the feeling or the stand of the writer. Yeah, this is the global thing at the end. Sometimes they say, what was the writer's purpose? Or does he agree with something? So the whole article didn't tackle, so I resorted to the title of the article. Is this a correct technique? You would have got a flavor from the topics. If he's always pointing out negative things in his introduction and the topic sentences, if it's always coming negative, you can say he's not a supporter of this. He's against the topic. Going to the title is risky. It might be a provocative question. It might be something which he argues against in the reading. So I wouldn't. You should have been able to get some sort of flavor of how the writer felt by him either saying, and this is a justified stand, or this is indeed so. Then he's agreeing, or he might say, however, others, including myself, hold a contrary view. Then he's against it. So you'll get subtle clues. You can't just answer the questions by reading topic sentences. The topic sentences guide you which paragraphs you need to read in detail. So if you still can't get it from that, and you've got time, because they're usually the last questions, they usually get the ordered ones and then the global overall one. If you've got time, do a bit of skimming through the bits you haven't read, see if anything helps you in that way. So I hope that's answered that one. I can see that there are some questions in the chat, so let me see what I've got in there. Carlin, hello. I'm wondering if there are any techniques in terms of eliminating possible paragraphs. Yes, definitely. Only read the paragraphs which you've got an answer about, which you've got a question about. If your question is about the Second World War, don't read the First World War paragraph. It's pointless. There's nothing in it for you. So you can select which paragraphs to read by knowing the questions. Perhaps I haven't said the obvious here, but you must read the questions first. Forget about the reading. Read the questions first, then the introductory paragraph, then the first topic sentences of each paragraph. But the most careful thing that you should read are the questions. As I said before, going through them, predicting what sort of answer they might be. Questions first, then you'll know which bits you can leave out. Your question asks you about a topic, you read the topic sentence of a paragraph, it's not about your question, don't read it. Pointless, waste of time. So in that way you can select which ones to read or not. And one more. Thank you for the clarification. We were told by our mentors here in the Philippines that we should write in capitals. I know. I'm quite frustrated with some of the things you've been told in the Philippines. Some of it is misleading, some of it's plain wrong, and some of it is debatable. I don't know whether it's right or wrong. They cannot possibly know. I've got several friends who work on the question writing panel at Cambridge University, and they don't tell me. So how someone in the Philippines knows for sure you can write in capitals, I do not know, but I don't. And I've been an examiner since 2004. So I think you are getting some plain wrong information from some of your sources. So if you write in capitals, you can't make a mistake with capitalization, but it's not recommended. I wouldn't do it. Can you give us the possible sources of the text used in actual exams? No, they come from everywhere. They could come from newspapers, magazines, textbooks, journals, reports, white papers, anywhere there's writing of a suitable level. So the typical text would be from a journal or an article in some sort of trade magazine, professional magazine, something which contains some technical information. It's not a general knowledge test. Hopefully you don't know anything about it and you read it with a fresh eye. So they can't do common things. You can't prepare for it by reading texts. You'd have to read millions of journals. You couldn't do it. So possible sources, yeah, anywhere. Not children's books. You won't get a Harry Potter thing to read. It won't be fiction. It'll be true reports, possibly about the future and how things are predicted to happen, possibly about how they are now, maybe historical, maybe across all three. But no, I can't give you possible sources other than that. It's very wide. Okay, I think that's all there's been in the chat box. Q&A is clear, chat is clear. Yeah. And 12 p.m. my time. So that's us had an hour. So I'd like to say thank you very much. Good questions there. Thank you. I hope I've been able to answer questions about the reading, how to free up a little bit more time on the day, and how to make your day less stressful. So as usual, Kate will put this up onto the YouTube channel, and we'll oh, I see one more question here. Just before I go, I'll see if I can get one more question. Oh, it just says thanks. Okay. Okay, no problem. So Kate will put it up onto the YouTube channel. If you've got any questions and you're on our Facebook group, do put them in there or send an email to myself or Kate. So thank you very much. Thanks for listening, and tune in for another one in a couple of weeks. Thank you. Bye-bye.